former Marine, the passing of former Marine Luis Ortiz at age 99, almost 100. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In a moment of silence, let's please keep Luis in our thoughts, and also the passing of Council President Susan Sorensen's father, Peter Henry Sorensen, last night. Thank you. In accordance with provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment, to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. Due to the COVID-19 situation, the Borough of Fairhaven's municipal facilities are closed to the public. This meeting is being presented through the Zoom meeting platform and being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this council meeting of July 13th, 2020 is available by call-in phone number or through the web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until public question/comment time, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice meetings including the scheduled meetings, which was amended by Borough's Resolution 2020-99 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 9, 2020, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board of the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. Allison, roll call, please.
Council members Banahan.
Here.
Christner Keefe.
Here.
Koch.
Yes.
McHugh.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Sorensen.
Okay. First up is a workshop session. The River Roads curbs, sidewalks, bike lane concept plan, and bid authorization. We have a presentation by Engineer Gardella. Rich, why don't you lead us into this and take us through the program.
Good evening, everyone. As the mayor had stated, we've been working with Monmouth County Engineering, looking at the opportunity to install some bike lanes, share the road, design standards within the River Road corridor, which would be from Lake Avenue extending all the way to Buena Vista. So basically from Red Bank to Rumson. This would be in coordination with the repaving and resurfacing of River Road that the county is actually going to be putting out to bid for the portion of Fairhaven in the coming weeks. So what we've done is we've put together the design drawings. I had sent over a couple of the sheets, and Allison can pull up the one that's down by Lake Avenue that starts at the beginning of the job. Let's just pull that up real quick. And basically, the design is a combination of two types of treatments. An actual bike lane, which is being proposed from Lake Avenue to the Hance intersection, the traffic signal, and then carrying what we call the sharrows, the share of the road, which would be from the Hance Road heading to the Rumson border, which is consistent with the design that we had done on Ridge and Harding a number of years ago with the county. And the design has been laid out in accordance with MUTCD, which is Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and federal standards. So while we wait to get that drawing up, basically you're governed based on the pavement width. So in the area down by Lake and Hance, the pavement width is such that we have enough room to put in a dedicated bike lane. Down there, as you know, there are no marked parking stalls. The parking is basically marked from the Hance Road through the business district all the way to Buena Vista. So in that portion, we're looking at doing a share the road and working with the county on some of their recommendations for lane width, placement of signage, pavement markings, etc. That's where we are. So the drawings are somewhat complete. I have assembled final quantities, and we are just looking at the option of incorporating this design in their resurfacing bid package, which is going, I think they're going out to bid. They're advertising for bid, I believe, on July 22nd or 3rd, so it is coming up pretty quickly here. So if anybody has any questions on this, or I know we don't have the drawing coming up right now, but
Well,
let me see if I can share. Let me see if I can share it. Here.
I would like to say we need to thank John McCormick, who lives in town, who's one of the nationally recognized top engineers for Complete Streets plans, who did the bulk of the heavy lift on the implementation or the design of the bike facilities along River Road, which is in accordance with the active transportation plan, which we developed several years ago. We attached to our master plan, which was paid for by the New Jersey DOT. So we need to really thank John McCormick for his efforts in designing this and taking some weight off of Rich Gardella. And then also Gail O'Reilly, who's of great assistance with me when we were advocating for the bike lanes on Ridge Road, has also done a tremendous amount of groundwork in regards to this plan. So that was my subcommittee for the bike lanes, and we need to thank them. They did an excellent job.
Okay, I just pulled up the first drawing that starts at Lake. So as you can see, we've got a dedicated bike lane here on both sides running, you know, east to west, west to east. And then as you come down the corridor, it does continue. And then at Hance Road.
Hey, Rich, what happens at the intersections where there are stop lines for cars coming onto River? It looked like the lane completely disappeared. Is that normal?
Yeah, so the lane disappears just as a double yellow would. You don't carry it through the intersection. So if I go back to that drawing, see a Chestnut. So the biker is in, you know, in the eastbound lane, and that stripe just terminates at the radius of that intersection, just like a double yellow would. And then obviously you have proper stop control and crosswalks there as well for any vehicles coming out of Chestnut.
Rich, is there an alert for the bicyclist that the lane is ending as they're approaching an intersection?
So there is some signage that we're putting in. You can see like in the beginning of the job, it says bike lane begin at Lake. So that notifies a motorist, okay, bike lane. And then as you can continue down the corridor, the subcommittee and myself, we kind of laid this out in such a way where you don't want to have too much sign clutter. So you've got pavement markings, you've got the little bicycle with the arrow, but the signage is placed somewhat appropriately so it doesn't cause any confusion for both the bicyclist and the driver of a vehicle. If you have too much signage, it becomes overwhelming. So pretty much at the beginning of the block, as you can see down by Lake, and then it'll carry through, and then your next signage would be just past the next intersection, and that is pretty consistent throughout. And then if I pull this other one up, and then you could see where we go from bike lane ends and then to share the road. So that introduces the Sharrow, which is basically a pavement marking in the center line of the travel lane. And then you have the sign, the symbol with the sign and share the road, you know, appropriately spaced.
Rich, on the north side of River Road, how many parking spots do you anticipate having to eliminate between Hans and Buena Vista on the north side?
I mean, we don't have those marked. Those are not currently striped as marked parking stalls, so we don't really have a count at this time. But if you go out there at any given moment, we've done a few site visits. There's maybe 1 or 2 cars out there. I know the dentist office that used to be there would generate a lot of on-street parking, but that's no longer. So, and I even went back and looked at some old Google mapping from the years past to see, and minimal vehicles. I mean, like 1 or 2 vehicles at most.
But then once you get to Fairhaven Road and you head east from Fairhaven Road, the parking on the north side becomes much denser.
Yeah, the parking stalls will remain there. I'm going to pull that up. So here's Fairhaven Road. If I zoom in, this is the same parking treatment we have now. These stalls over here.
Right.
You've got the pizzeria on the corner and the dry cleaners, etc. So these spaces are all carried through, just as with the rest of the only difference we're doing is we're boxing out the stalls. That defines the space a little better, and it also creates like a traffic calming. So it allows the motorists to really see this travel lane. Rather, now we just kind of have tick marks for the parking stalls. And that would carry this through all the way, as you can see with the striping. And then when we go to the next one, obviously this is a busy area within the borough for parking. You've got the coffee shop on the corner here. You've got some businesses in here. You see we did the hatching at De Normandy, consistent with what's there now, and so on.
So, Rich, I have some serious concerns about the safety of cyclists between Hans and Buena Vista, and I've been pretty vocal about it. To me, perhaps on the south side of River Road is a little bit safer because you don't have parked cars, you don't have pedestrians or motorists getting in and out of their cars. But on the north side of the road, it looks to me to be a recipe for disaster. I mean, right now it's difficult to get in and out of your car with passing motorists on River Road. And by adding cyclists and encouraging cyclists into that mix, it looks to me that it could get to be a very busy situation.
Well, we did look at that, obviously. We do understand that concern. We did a conference call last week with Monmouth County Engineering, because obviously this is their roadway and any type of design and treatment needs to go to them for review. Initially, we had 11-foot lane widths. We have now increased this travel lane to 13 in each direction. And we also, right now the parking stalls are 8 feet in width here, and they go down to 7. So you get a little more area. And they also made us put the Sharrow in the middle because, you know, obviously it's in the middle of the lane width. You know, this is in accordance with federal standard design. It just so happens it goes to our downtown, but it is also consistent with the active transportation plan that is part of the master plan. So, and our subcommittee, we looked at all this as well, but without literally removing parking in our downtown to try to do some type of you know, bike ped safety improvement, this is the most viable design.
Do we have a count on how many folks travel on River in that area, either at the west end or the east end or both? I don't know if we've looked, if the pedestrian and bicycle safety plan had any of that in it.
I don't believe it did any counts.
Okay.
but it did define this corridor as a, not a, somewhat of a priority to try to maintain this bicycle network, within the borough.
And the reason I ask is, and I totally understand Councilwoman Koch's point. We spoke earlier today about this. I've seen children riding bikes on sidewalks. I don't get too flared up about that, but that's just life. They should be, following the rules of the road. But then again, we've got all kinds of doors opening on parked cars and cars going in both directions. And the root of my question really was about cyclists for recreation that are doing, 20 miles an hour on their road bikes, or delivery people delivering food, or people that commute to and from through our town, whatever the case is. I don't generally see them on the sidewalks, and I do think that this will give them a bit more visibility to the driver on the road. I don't know the answer to Councilwoman Koch's question, which is, will it encourage more bike riding on River Road in an area that's pretty tight? 13 feet on each side is it's a tight road for a 30 mile an hour in that area, I think it is. So I understand Councilwoman Koch's concern, but at the same time, I can also see how this might help on the east end of town to provide more awareness to drivers that there are bikes and they do need to share the road.
It's well said, Chris. Well said. Rich, when
Yeah.
we put in the sharrows, does that change the speed limit?
It does not. Initially, we thought we were going to have to bring the speed limit down to 25. We spoke to Monmouth County Engineering, and the speed limit is consistent with other bike lanes they've done throughout the county, and we could keep it the way it is, or we do have an option to make that request change.
So Rich, I actually had spoken to the mayor, and he suggested that I look at 2 areas that have the sharrow opportunity on Bridge Avenue, and then again over by the Armory in Red Bank, by the train station.
Mm-hmm.
And I can absolutely see how that's a safe method of transit, that it works for both the motorists and the cyclists. But I really spent a lot of time online this weekend trying to find advantages of using this system through a busy commercial district. And I'm just concerned that having that type of traffic go by the Acme Shopping Center, where we're not even sure what the result of opening up a breakfast place and a fast food or Dunkin' Donuts is going to have on the traffic pattern. And I haven't been able to find any compelling reasons why a sharrow through a heavily trafficked business area is a good idea. And this is going to be the last thing I say about it. I was under the impression that the reason we went to the expense of putting the sharrow on Ridge Road was to reduce the amount of cycling traffic on River Road. And now we seem to be coming back to River Road again.
Well, as far as Ridge Road goes, at the time, we didn't have an active transportation plan. It was in no way intended to take traffic off of River Road. I think it was even before my mayorship, the town, maybe even before my being on council, the town adopted a complete streets policy. The county adopted a complete streets policy, the state has a complete streets policy, and the federal government has a complete streets policy. So all 4 of those entities, from the municipality all the way up to the federal government, had policies that dictate that when you maintain a road, i.e. repaving it, that you install complete street facilities, bike ped facilities on the road to increase the safety for the cyclist and the pedestrians. It was just simply that, at the time, we didn't have the active transportation plan. The county worked with us because they were paving both Ridge and Rumson roads. And we implemented the bike lanes on Ridge and Rumson, which basically takes it from Harding Road in Little Silver all the way down to Seabright. This is just an extension of that policy. So this is a policy that's been in effect for well over 10 years, and we're simply implementing it.
I have a question. Betsy, Betsy, did you have additional questions?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay. My question is there any evidence that adding signage and sharrows and bike lanes where we are able, because, it's clear that we can't the full stretch of River Road, is there evidence that it increases or improves safety?
Yes.
Or reduces, injuries, fatalities to cyclists?
There is a substantial body of evidence that the facilities have a traffic calming effect. It slows vehicles down, and it raises awareness that that you will have or may have pedestrians and cyclists, whether they be recreational or individuals who are there out of necessity. That they will be on the road, and that it is the obligation of the obligations of yielding start off with who took the road first. So you had the pedestrian first, you had the horses second, the cyclists were third, and the automobile was fourth. So the vehicle yields to the cyclist, the horse, and the pedestrian. The cyclist yields to the horse and pedestrian. The horse yields to the pedestrian, and the pedestrian has the right of way. So that's the law behind it. And all this does is it brings an awareness of that to the motoring public and to the cyclist, when they're on the road. The other thing is, portion of this is this also informs the cyclist that they have an obligation, and the obligation of the cyclist is to stay as far to the right as they deem safe. So that's the idea behind the bike lane. And then the share the road, lets them know that although they do have an obligation to stay as far to the right as they deem safe, they do have the ability and the right to take the road until they get to a point where they can get back towards the curb line. And that is the whole concept behind this.
Yeah, and the what happens when you put bike lanes in, it actually narrows the driving lane, which actually slows cars down.
Yes.
So when you do street striping and you put in emergency lanes and you put in, or shoulders, and you put in bike lanes, it actually slows the traffic down. And that's a lot of what you'll see has happened both on Ridge Road and also on Rumson Road, where these cars are ripping through doing 55, 50, in a 45 or a 40 or a 35. So it had a calming effect, and this actually should theoretically slow down traffic surely on the west side of town. I would be a proponent of slowing the actual posted speed limit down to 25 on the east end of River, coming out of Rumson, because if you come out of Rumson, you see, the people are bombing down the hill. It's a really wide street there. Almost nobody's parking on it until you get to the Shrewsbury River Yacht Club. I would also be a fan of narrowing the lanes on Fairhaven Road and Hants, just by using stripes, not necessarily making the street any narrower, but if you narrow the visual of the lane itself, it slows the drivers down.
So I guess that's my next question. You kind of read my mind, Councilman Rodriguez. Is there any, I guess historically, has there been any discussion of approaching the county to reduce the speed limit, and or is there any appetite among the governing body to do so at this point?
We did, I think in my very first year, we talked about trying to get the speed limit lowered to 25 because I believe the pedestrian and bicycle safety plan was introduced and approved, and there were some positive comments by the I guess the experts that we were doing very well to keep the speed limits low in town, and they hadn't seen that kind of thing, and there was a push to go a little bit lower on the east end of the business district on River Road. We didn't go to the county for approval though. That we fell short of that. You know, like this is my own personal feeling that we could probably be a bit safer. The survival rate at 25 miles an hour is significantly higher than the survival rate at 30 miles an hour and higher.
And understand when it comes to the speed limit, there is a process. So, you know, we install the bike facilities, the showers, the bike lanes, and if we wanted to reduce the speed limit, we would ask the county to come out and they would do a study, and then they basically set up a device that measures the speeds of the automobiles, and I believe it's the 85th percentile of what the average. They basically let the motoring public determine the speed limit, and then you go to the 85th percentile of the traffic there. There's some leeway, I think about plus or minus 5 miles an hour, depending on other road conditions and the presence of such facilities as sharrows and bike lanes. So that would be the process if we were to go through that. It's just that we're not allowed to set our own our own speed limits. And of course there are some of those who think that the automobile should be able to go 40 miles an hour pretty much everywhere, and that borough's attempts to reduce speed limits are only a thinly veiled attempt to boost court revenue through speeding tickets, which is not the case here. But I have heard that criticism of Fairhaven. But what we are doing is we are looking, you know, to increase the safety of our motoring, cycling, and pedestrian public. We are a cycling town. I think that's one of the charms of this municipality. You know, we're following a policy laid down many years ago and dictated by our active transportation plan. So I think this is a good program to go through.
Could I ask the chief if he has an opinion? You know, what his thoughts are in terms of traffic safety, cyclist safety, pedestrian safety?
Yeah, Betsy, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, Joe.
Yeah, you know, I was at the meeting, you know, me and Rich met. I looked at this. I mean, putting the showers for the bikes, I don't see any real downside to it. You know, there's no way you could put a bike lane past Hance Road. The road's just not wide enough. I just don't really see a downside. You know, there's an argument, like the mayor said, that, you know, it will make you more aware and it should help you be more obvious of the bicyclists. I don't know how it wouldn't. So even if, you know, there's no study done, I believe, on exactly, but I'm sure it will. Like I said, signage at crosswalks helps, so why would signage for bikes not help? As far as the speed limit, I think, again, we would have to really look at that and see what the average speed is. You know, during the day, I don't believe there's really that much of a speed problem because there's just so much traffic. And at night, we'd have to really look at it because 25 at 2 o'clock in the morning is kind of slow for River Road, in my opinion. So we would have to really look at that and do a study for that. But as long as when we first looked at this, Rich was talking about putting a shoulder on the south side of River Road all the way up, right, Rich? And then I think that kind of went away because my only thing was if we put a shoulder, we got to make sure that it's not wide. If you put a wide shoulder, people are going to start to park there. So we got to make sure. And is that eliminated, Rich, I believe, right? I don't see it now.
Yes, it's eliminated because of the 13-foot wide. The only place we have a little room to put a shoulder line is basically from Locust up to like our driveway at Borough Hall. But
Yeah,
it's only a couple feet wide, so it's not going to
that was
encourage.
the only concern I had at first is If we make, at first I think that shoulder was going to be pretty wide, and that would cause too much of a problem because people would start to park there. But, I see that Rich did change some of the stuff, made the lane a little wider, which I think will help. We don't want to make them too narrow because then you cause a problem. They're so narrow that you can't get around bicyclists or people coming out of their cars. You have to give them a little room. So hopefully, Councilman Koch, that kind of answers it. I just don't see a downside to it. If we can do it and it makes people more aware of it, then I don't see the downside to it.
Right.
Thank
That
you.
kind of help you? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions from the council regarding the bike ped plan?
I got two quick questions that just kind of popped up through this presentation. Mayor, maybe you know this one. Do you think by implementing these bike lanes that would help with the green team as far as certification? Do you know about that for encouraging?
I really don't know much about the green team and or that level. I believe that the bike lanes and the ATP certainly gave us some points in that, but I couldn't speak to it exactly.
All right. I could look into that myself. I was just wondering if anyone knew off the top of their head. Second thing, Rich.
Mike, I think the answer to that is you get points for bike lanes. I'm not so sure you'll get extra points for adding more bike lanes.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa. Rich, one question for you. When the road becomes a share the road, or I don't know if that changes the criteria, does that increase the number of required street sweepings? I know debris on the roads can be pretty dangerous for bikes. Does that mean, is there any requirement to increase street sweeping or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. Right now, per the stormwater regs, we are supposed to be sweeping the business district once a month. But with the share the road, it's because it's not a dedicated bike lane. Most of the debris from a street is usually along the curb line. So that's why, out on Ridge Road, when there's piles of brush and then other road debris, we have the county come through periodically, more frequently, to keep that curb line and that edge of roadway clean. With the shallows that we show here, because you're basically sharing that travel lane, you're not going to have that much aggregate and what have you, in that area. I'm not aware, though, to answer your question, of any additional street sweepings that would be necessary.
Right, where the share the road is not, but the bike lanes are outside of the business district. Okay.
Yeah, and once again, it's something we would monitor. So if we need to sweep more frequently, we can certainly put that into our program.
Rich, I think the county sweeps River, right? I've seen county machinery on River Road sweeping the streets.
Yes.
So it wouldn't impact our budget or our manpower in any way.
No, it wouldn't.
Thanks.
I have one additional question. The increased cost associated with running the bike lanes, it's just the signage and the striping?
It would be so as part of the county bid, they would include the signage, which is the actual street sign and the post, the striping associated with the bike lane or the shoulder line, and also the pavement markings, which is the sharrow. And then down on the other end would be the bicycle symbol plus the arrow.
And that's borne by the county?
There would be an agreement drawn up, which they've already drafted, in the event we decide to go through with this. And there would be a 50-50 cost share.
Okay.
So I did prepare an engineer's estimate and calculated, because I have to give them final quantities for the bid package. Let me pull that up. This is based on the quantities from the drawing. So you've got the different signage, bike lane, begin, end, share the road, and bike symbol signage. Then you've got the traffic stripes. And then you've got the pavement markings, which is both the bike and the arrow and the sharrow. So based on all the quantities, you're at roughly $39,000 total. Now, once again, remember this job is 8,500 linear feet. So it is a pretty good stretch. You know,
Your estimate isn't coming up on the screen.
oh, it isn't? Hold on.
I think you're having an issue I had in the beginning. Do you want me to share mine?
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Is it there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically what I had said, the first 5 items in the estimate are the signage, bike lane, begin, end, share the road, and bike signals. Then you've got the striping, and then you've got the pavement markings. So all in, once again, this is my estimate, you know, assuming $50 a square foot for signage, and then these unit costs for the striping and markings, you're at 39, and then the borough would be half of that. Now, the prices may come in better because this is being bid in a county-wide project. So the traffic striping, that $2.50, that might come in at $1.50. I don't know. You know, economy of scale. There's going to be miles of striping in that county bid. We're just a small portion here.
Is Jim on the phone?
I am.
Do you have a view on, this would be capital, I guess? Is that,
Yes, it would be
Yes.
capital, Chris.
okay.
Correct.
And so we would roll this into the cost of the curbs and the sewer drainage and the sidewalks for the preparation for repaving of River Road.
Correct.
If you went back and looked at the 2019 ordinance that ultimately authorized the curbs and sidewalks on River Road at 1.4 million, it is such that this would be included as part of that. So I'm sure that's the second part of this discussion is the curbs and sidewalks on River Road. But you can charge both of that to that ordinance, or if you decide not to move forward with curbs and sidewalks or River, you could still charge the bike lane portion of it to that same ordinance.
I'm sorry, Chris. I thought you were going to ask me to address the safety and the logistics. But yes, that's correct. It all is part of that. I was just in Lenox, Massachusetts, which has a little downtown area. It's probably more resemblant of our Eastern Business District. They have a sign asking cyclists to dismount where the road narrows and the businesses are, or to take a short detour. The equivalent for us would be having folks who are eastbound go down Hance, down 3rd, back up Fairhaven Road and back out to River Road so that you don't try and squeeze all this activity into this already congested span. I think that's the way to go. Unless the county's going to bring us down to 25 miles an hour, which I really doubt. The county is all about, my experience with them, it's all about counting cars, and wherever they see too many cars in traffic, they up the speed limit. It's their road, that's going to be their choice. And that's what I'm confident their choice would be, given the choice. So as a cyclist myself, I've logged thousands of miles in different cities. An area like this on River Road, I think you have too much going on already. 25 miles an hour on a sign gets you 40 miles an hour in actuality. I think it's a bad idea.
What does 30 get us? 45?
Yep. Yep. Or 50. And I've had close calls of my own, you know, right a couple of 100 feet from my house where they say all accidents happen. I don't see it happening. It's all well thought out. It's as good as you can make it, given the constraints. But I think overall, if we have the choice, we look at something like I described, where we take bicycles off a River Road. So a bike lane is going to be for cyclists. You know, even me as an older guy in just okay shape, on flat ground, a light tailwind, I can get a road bike doing 25 miles an hour, almost 30 miles an hour without a lot of effort. That's what you're going to get in a bike lane. It's not going to be kids on beach cruisers and recreational mountain bikes, you know, going out for pizza. They're not going to be in that bike lane. What you're going to get are people moving at a good clip, and the extra 2 feet, that's not even the width of a car door. As an experienced cyclist, I'd avoid it.
You brought up Third Street, and it's not for this conversation, but I want to plant a seed here. I would be in favor of when we repave Third Street between Hants and Fairhaven Road, or up to Church, I think is where the paving had stopped. I'd be a fan of Sharrows just to teach our children the direction and sort of give them a little bit of boundary to understand safety. Even on Third Street, which is generally closed during school commutes. I'm a fan of the idea of giving them, getting them used to that kind of stuff, because I think that goes to the heart of what Councilwoman Koch was concerned about, is like drawing more folks onto river cycling, especially in the east end of town, where it's probably not, it's not, the word probably is inaccurate. It's not the best cycling environment. It's better on the west end of River Road. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been in favor of a bike lane on Third, because the kids frequently just don't understand the difference between when the road's closed and when it's not. And they think they can operate with impunity at all hours of the day on Third Street. A bike lane would be a great way to help get that corralled. And as far as the striping and the signs, they only serve to guide the cyclist as to where to be. I don't think your average motorist even sees them.
Okay, any other comments about this? You want to talk about the curbs and sidewalks?
My only comment is, Mayor, before we open that, is I'll point out again to the governing body that this decision has to be made this evening, because Rich has to get these plans and to the county. To Councilman Banahan's point, I think you probably could end up doing a change order if they wanted to change a section of this, but ultimately we would have to allow the county to put this in their bid, and they're not bidding it as an alternate. I think they're bidding as part of their base bid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing goes with the decision on the curbs and sidewalks. Rich Gardella you'd have to give Rich the go-ahead to finally design that, and his bid docs would have to be ready for your next meeting to award that bid to get those curbs and sidewalks. To authorize the bid at the next meeting and to award it on the August 17th meeting, so we can have that project done before the county paves.
I just ask one final question on the bike lane concept plan. Rich, is there any increased cost if, for example, we decide not to proceed with that project today? Is there an increased cost if we revisit it at a later date and decide to do it at that time?
Not so much cost, it's more the bike lane is going to dictate the location of the double yellow, within River Road. So if we don't incorporate or anticipate this design, they're just going to mill and pave and put back what's there. So this double yellow is offset. This has been designed to work with the bike lanes and to share the road, and the on-street parking that we show here, east of Hants. So
essentially,
cost
essentially the concept plan changes if we don't proceed with the bike lanes.
Yeah, definitely, because the striping, for example, at the Hants Road intersection, these double yellows would be different.
Does the crown of the road get impacted by that as well then?
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, these are more symmetrical, where this double yellow now on this side is pretty much in the center line of the road. And then, it's all laid out, so it's all uniform here.
Got it.
Where
So
the existing's a little different.
Will the middle of the road literally change as you're crossing Hants Road?
The middle of the road,
I think it does already, doesn't it?
it does already, and you can see these double yellows pretty much line up. They're a little off, but it's designed where the motorist will have no problem proceeding in the westerly direction and easterly at that. And it's a signalized intersection as well.
And right, and west of Hants Road, aren't you literally just dividing the road in half, because the bike lanes are the same width, right?
Correct. That's just like it's shown here.
Yeah, so there's no change to the double striping, the yellow striping, is there?
I believe,
Yeah, it is, because this double yellow would be pushed over a couple feet, because the easterly direction is a travel lane where now there's parking on this side. So everything is shifted a little bit to the south.
So are you eliminating the parking on that side? Is that what you're saying?
We're eliminating parking because of the bike lane from Haddon Park to Hance Road. And that would have to be done through ordinance as part of this project, right up to here. But currently it's not marked with striping for on-street, but you are allowed to park there.
Right, so the families who have homes along that strip of the road that perhaps use it for guests or company or whatever, once you put a bike lane in, they can't park there anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So you've actually eliminated their parking opportunity.
As part of this design, yes.
the people on the other side of the street already have that issue. I believe they
Right.
all have off-street parking. I don't know that there's any homes that don't.
There's plenty of off-street parking opportunities. Gail O'Reilly actually went and spoke with some of the people, especially between Grange and Hanson, and found no issues.
Great.
And there's a veterinarian, right? Is there a veterinarian on the corner?
Yeah, right here.
Yes, but they have a parking
They
lot.
have the parking lot, and then they have parking on Grange. This no parking sign, that's that no parking here to corner.
Mhm.
But then they have everything north of there at Grange. And then you got some of the blocks are shorter here, where you've got Lexington and Lincoln, so that provides opportunities as well.
So you're directing parking onto side streets rather than use River Road?
Well, from what we can tell, the on-street parking in this area, based on the borough looking at it and the subcommittee, is minimal. If you're talking about if they're having a barbecue or a party and their current driveway situation can't handle the overflow, there are areas where you can park. You can park on Lincoln, you can park on Lexington, you can park on Grange. As Councilman Rodriguez said, the people on the south side already have that issue. There is no parking permitted there.
Right, except some of them park on the other side.
And there's more driveways, these are more densely, if you could see the spacing of these driveways, they're more.
Right, they're
driveways
smaller
here.
homes, but there are a lot
Right.
of smaller homes.
Right.
But some of those people who live on the south side may use the north side for parking.
Possibly.
I've
Yeah.
run the length of River Road hundreds of times. I think I can count, like Rich said, there might be one or two cars that park that entire mile. It just, for whatever reason, people don't take advantage of it. And occasionally the people that do park end up parking on the sidewalk, which is a really interesting thing because of the way that the traffic goes through there. Cars pull up on top of the curb because it's a very strange, there's not a lot of safety in numbers of parked cars. There's so few of them, people park on the sidewalk, which is also an interesting solution.
Mm-hmm. So are there any other questions about this? Okay, Tracy, we're going to be looking to approve both this and the curbs.
Well, you
The
can
sidewalk?
separate them, you can bifurcate them, Mayor, if you want.
Okay.
Rich does have a cost
Can you-
estimate and a discussion on the curbs and sidewalks as a follow-up to last week's meeting also.
Can you see the screen I have up here? With the map, with the Bing?
We're seeing a map.
So this is at Hance Road looking west.
I'm seeing the, still seeing the design plan.
Oh, okay. I got you.
There it is.
Okay, so this is at the Hance Road traffic signal, looking west. So as you can see, there's no cars parked here for quite a distance. There might be one down here.
My money is that it's parked on the sidewalk.
And it's parked, you can see it straddles onto the sidewalk. That's what they do. So,
This is also a very good lead into your curbs and sidewalks discussion to give you an idea of the condition of the curbs and sidewalks
yeah,
in
you
that
can
section
see
of town.
just in this area.
So I think what's important to note when you're looking at this is in many of the areas where the county will be paving River Road, we don't have curbs. The curbs are pumpkin toothed. The reveal on the curb face is 2 maybe to 4 inches, where really the standard is 6. And then a lot of in some areas the sidewalks are nice, but in much of the areas they're not, need replacement. So this really finishes up the the River Road streetscape from one end of town to the other. And I believe in addition to the curbs and sidewalks, Rich does have the traffic, the street lights as an add alternate to the job. So when we get a bid, we can determine whether we want to invest in that or not.
Yes, the decorative street, the acorn style street lights. And also the, at this end of the town, we don't have the decorative crosswalks, you know, the stamped red.
Mm-hmm.
That is a costly item as well. So we were going to bid that as an alternate to see where that pricing comes in at the various intersections.
That historically has also left us with a maintenance.
Right.
All right, so are there any questions about the curbs and sidewalks, the necessity of them?
Rich, do you have the cost estimate for that?
Yeah. Let me just pull it up real quick. I don't have it handy. It was
I thought you sent
roughly,
it through today, I'm sorry.
oh, that was the cost estimate for
Oh, for the bike lanes?
the bike lanes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I could find it, but we had circulated it the last time. It's like, it was roughly 1.3.
I was just gonna say, about 1.3.
Yes.
Rich, how hard, I know I had a discussion, I believe with Councilwoman Koch last week regarding some of the other sidewalks on River from the older section that they had done originally. How hard would it for you to put an alternate in this bid that would replace those also where they're warm, even if you just did it by quantities? Is that a possibility?
Yes, we could do an if and where directed. And as part of this bid, especially that there's no grant attached to it. So we could spend the money in other areas without any issue.
So Rich, some of the areas that I was discussing with our Borough Administrator Teresa was in the Eastern Business District. There are at a couple of driveways, there's a couple of places where the concrete has failed. And I was hoping that if we have the materials available to us on the western end of River Road, that it would be an easier fix doing it all at one time.
Yeah, we did that. We did that on the last streetscape job. We came through and tried to fix more of the egregious areas. We could certainly do this the same. Because those areas that are damaged, they were put in back in 06, 07, probably 06, so 14 years already.
Okay.
All right, so let's see if we can move this along. So River Road curb sidewalks, bike lane concept plan, and bid authorization. Let's I guess, separate it out. So I have a motion to accept the curbs and sidewalks.
It's actually going to be a motion to authorize us to put the bid authorization on the next agenda, and Rich will finalize the engineering design in the
Yeah.
meantime.
I'll
Do I have
make
a
that
motion?
Second.
I have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any nays, any abstentions? No. All right. Next up, the bike lane concept plan. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion. Do I have a second? I do not have a second.
Are we saying without a second, we don't want to have the bike lane to have a vote on it?
Well, or at least, here's the thing. We can always take the bike lanes out at a future date because it seems we have differing opinions on the council. But at least we could move ahead with the concept plan and have it put into the bid package. And understand that to not do this would be going against the active transportation plan as a part of our master plan.
I think the question is that, this is the first time everybody's had an opportunity to look at the bike lane concept plan and talk about it at length and in detail. And I could be wrong, but just from based on everybody's comments, it sounds like there might just be some people might be resolute and others might just not be certain one way or another.
Okay.
Are you suggesting, Mayor, that if we include it in the bid authorization package, we can then thereafter pull it out?
Yes.
Well, it's not your bid authorization, it's the county's bid authorization. I just
But I
want to
believe-
ask Rich a question. When the county sends this out to bid, do they give design plans that show the center yellow for all roadways, or that's something they'll work on later?
The only thing that's included in the bid is they show a standard detail and quantities. So typically, once the job is awarded, like, we're not even going to include those design drawings that I showed tonight. I'm just going to give them a standard detail with quantities. And then once they award the job to whoever the contractor is, during construction or prior to construction, then they're given those drawings. So they have something to work off of. And then obviously you would work with the striping contractor, because it's going to be a subcontractor. And then we would be out in the field coordinating all that. The county handles all the double yellow, the stop bars, and crosswalks. The cost share would be for the bike lanes and the sharrows and the signage associated with all that. And the parking stalls, the county doesn't pay for it all. So for the entire River Road corridor, we would include the striping of the parking as it is today to be included in our streetscape bid, which is just a 4-inch, solid white line by whatever linear feet. I don't have a total on that, but it's showing those lines.
One of the things
So
the
the way,
county,
because of the, yeah,
one of the things the county had mentioned in when we had our conference call, that they would want to, next from the borough, they'd want us to adopt the ordinance that eliminates the parking in that western section of town, and they'd want us to move forward with the agreement to share the cost. The timing of that, I'm not so sure how quickly that'll come up. I'm just pointing that out as, I believe that was the next step. Was it not, Rich, those two things?
those were the two things, but obviously the more urgent matter is to give them quantities and details since they're looking to advertise next week. And then I don't think they're awarding it for a little while. So we do have, a meeting or two until we have to.
Can you tell me what cost is involved with eliminating parking places? Because I thought the cost was associated with striping. So if you eliminate the striping, is there a cost associated with eliminating the parking spot?
The parking that would be eliminated isn't currently striped. And it wouldn't have been, we didn't even look at the possibility of striping that from Hance to Lake as part of the,
Right, right. So there's no cost with that then.
No cost, but the county wants to see us take our current ordinance, which allows parking there, and change it to not allow parking there.
Got it.
yeah. So like we had mentioned, the one way to handle this is to include the quantities in their bid, and then we can do a change order. We can have them do a change order to take it out if we don't come up with a firm decision on the project.
So should I qualify my motion to say that it's for consideration in the event that we would like to pull it out? Is that where we are right now?
Yes, I believe so.
You can get behind that. Chris, I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Nay?
I'm a nay.
Okay.
2 nays?
Abstain.
2 nays.
Maybe you ought to.
Nay.
Okay, let's go to a roll call. Allison, take a roll call, please.
Councilmember Banahan,
No.
Commissioner Keefe,
Abstain.
Koch,
No,
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Enthusiastic, yes.
so you have 2 noes, 1 abstain, and 2 yes.
So, Mr. Mayor, you have to break the tie.
Correct.
And I am an enthusiastic yes. Good. So we'll discuss this further. I will get more information from Mr. Banahan, Councilman Kocher, the rest of the council. Hopefully we can dissuade you from your current positions. Because to do so would be to change a course the borough's been on for nigh a decade. So shall we continue on with public comments on agenda items? Motion open.
so moved.
Okay. Teresa, please open it up
Okay.
to the public.
All right. We've got RB first. They can unmute themselves. RB? And then we could,
I think Allison can unmute RB.
I asked them to unmute.
Oh,
I did too. We could hold on RB and go to Susan O'Brien. Go ahead, Susan.
Good evening. I actually don't think RB knows how to unmute herself. So you might want to explain when you go back to her. Anyway, I think that you should really pay attention to Betsy's thoughts on River Road because she lived here for 10 years and she's well aware of the traffic and the impact, etc. I've lived here for 45. And I'll tell you, ever since Jerome's accident, I have nightmares going out front. And I happen to have a copy of the 2017 Active Transportation Plan. And in there, one of the low-hanging fruits that they recommended was 25 miles an hour on River Road. And I think that we should abide by the transportation plan that we had done. I've read most of this. I will have to go back and double check some of the other things. But I'll tell you, they fly past me. And to Chris's point that he doesn't care about people on the sidewalk, I've almost been run down by bicyclists on the sidewalk. As a matter of fact, last night, somebody came past, didn't move over away from me. I was cleaning up my brush along there that a couple of you get concerned about. And they didn't move away from me when I said, And I was under the impression that 11-year-olds and under could ride on the sidewalk. I said something to the effect and got a snarky retort from the gentleman. Not that he was a gentleman. So I called the police last night to have a discussion with them about what's legitimate and what's not. So riding on the sidewalk along here is the major problem. So, and I don't think the bike lanes through the business district is a smart idea at all. It's just, if you look at where the accidents have been, it's a terrible idea. I like the idea of sending them down 3rd Street. And I thought that was part of the active transportation plan. If my memory serves me, I can't pinpoint that spot. But the 25 miles an hour, that's page 103. And when I was at a freeholder meeting a few years ago, and I asked about the 25 miles an hour, they said that the request needs to come from the town and then they will act on it. And I think that's something that needs to be done. That's it.
Thank you,
So
Susan.
Susan, since you mentioned my name, I didn't say I don't care. I said it doesn't bother me that much, but I do think that if they don't have an alternative to ride their bikes in the street because it's so dangerous and there's no markings and there's nothing to attract the attention of the drivers, I think we're in a pretty tough spot. Because if they can't ride
However,
and they can't ride,
the bicyclist, if you listen to the mayor before, is supposed to yield to the pedestrian, and they did not. They squeezed past me last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably wouldn't have called the police except for the snarky remark I got as he went past.
I hear you. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Has Ruth been able to unmute? RB? No? Okay, let's go to Judy.
If she's on a telephone, she can star 9.
She's free.
Ruth, okay, Ruth has a, Ruth Blazer?
Yes.
That is RB?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I agree with Betsy 150%. You have not talked to the people between Hans and the municipal building. Why would any child want to bicycle down River Road to begin with? It's just ridiculous. As somebody said, yes, even the landscapers park one wheel, one side up on the sidewalk. The road is not wide enough. You have got to be out there when the trailer trucks from the Acme and the gasoline delivery tankers from the Valero station start heading west on River Road. They are, as long as my lot is wide, and if there's an SUV or anybody parked in the marked spaces in front of my house, they are over the center line because they're wide, and you've got the buses. And what do I do with my garbage cans? What do I do with my brush? The whole thing, we've got to get back to the village concept. From Chestnut Street, send them somehow down 3rd because it runs parallel to River. It's a much better view. And the kids have no reason to ride down River Road. They can get into anything from Foreman Street or the back roads if they have to go to the stores. It's just mind-boggling that you would put these kids in this kind of danger. Another thing I want to mention is in your picture that you had showing River Road going west, somebody's got their garbage can in the street. That's where your bike lane is. And I agree that there should be no more signs in Fairhaven. I also looked at Chestnut and Oakland Street in Red Bank, and those decals on the road are much easier to see if you're going to do that. So anyhow, you've just got too much going on River Road to add a bicycle lane. It just isn't wide enough, and it's a real danger. You've got to stand in front of my house and watch these trailer trucks go by. I can barely get out of my driveway most days. And as you remember when I complained years ago before they put the markings in for me, John Laurie, when they get totally back in business, is going to have his people parking in front of my house again all day. So he doesn't allow his people to park on their own property. He's got 23 parking spaces there down at John Laurie, and he tells his employees to park on River Road or down Smith Street. So, as I say, my bottom line is you've got too much going on River Road now to add bike lanes. When you put the curbs and sidewalks in, I'd appreciate it if you continue what is on the south side of River Road from Chestnut Street to Hance Road, which is that little green strip between the curb and the sidewalk. It makes the place look so much less commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ruth, just as a point of clarification, we are not putting bike lanes east of Hance. That's where the Sharrows go. And again, the Sharrows are really a traffic calming element to slow traffic down and make the motorists aware that cyclists will be there. Maybe not so much the children. They may be better off going down 3rd Street or the back street to get around town, but there are recreational cyclists. We have a substantial number of recreational cyclists in the area. And then also we have many people who are utilizing River Road to commute. These are people who are on the road on bicycles purely out of necessity. And if you're out there early in the morning, as I have been, 5:30 to 8:30, there is a substantial number of them. And this is really to assist those folks so they have a safe transit from their home to their place of work and back again. And for me, that's the real major point here.
But 5:30 to 8:30, you don't have the people who are parking there to go to work because they leave their cars there all day. So I don't think it becomes an obstacle for them. They're gone. They've come and they've gone by then.
They do return later on in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, like 6 o'clock, and again, you've got the reverse.
Yep.
There aren't that many people out there parked.
So we're not adding lanes in that area. We're simply adding the share the road.
I know you're taking road space.
Well,
essentially.
Okay, so I think that's probably the crux of what this discussion's about. Maybe the concerns of Councilperson Banahan and Councilperson Koch is that we're not taking the road. The cyclists are already there. What we're looking to do is to bring order and awareness to it and safety to a condition that already exists.
Yeah, well, if they take personal responsibility when they get hit with a car, that would be very nice. But I've been out there working on my hedges and my bushes, and I've almost been run over by cyclists too. And they come down the sidewalk, and I like the piece that the police chief put in the month's focus with the rules of the road for bicyclists, because of the 8 or 10 that are on there, at least 4 of them are totally ignored all the time, which means ride in the direction of the traffic. Don't ride on the sidewalks. It's just wild. Anyhow, you've got to live in my house and see the trailer trucks before you even consider this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else do we have? We have Judy.
Yes. Oh, Judy has an older version of Zoom. First time I've ever seen that. So I will promote her to a panelist and she can talk. Go ahead, Judy.
Judy's still muted.
No, she's now a panelist. She can speak. She unmute herself. Or I can unmute her now.
Got it.
There you go, Judy.
Go
Good
ahead.
evening.
It's going to be Dick.
Somebody's got to talk a little bit more about pedestrians. They were virtually ignored, and pedestrians are a different portion of the problem for River than for Ridge. Does anybody know the both numbers of crossings on Ridge and on River? There's many more pedestrian crossings, right, on River.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 2 schools that use that cross River Road, excuse me. young children crossing. We're also a pedestrian town. We're a biking town, but we're also a pedestrian town. And I think you used the words pedestrian and biking plan, right?
Yes, it's a combined plan, yes.
Right. And there is some conflict in safety for pedestrians riding right next to the road and bicyclists coming right next to them. And that's the case from Hants on the south side, well, both sides, from Hants to the east. You're walking right on the road. You step off the road, a 25-mile-an-hour bicyclist is on you immediately.
Well, we do have, I mean, for the pedestrians, we do have sidewalks on both sides of the road. And at every intersection, there are marked crosswalks with signage indicating the crosswalks. All right.
Yes.
The only exception may be Smith Street and a couple of the others where they're mid-block on the other side. The street doesn't cross over directly.
There are sidewalks, Mayor, but one of them is immediately adjacent to the road.
Yes.
And it's a far different situation for a pedestrian to have a bicyclist going by, as you say, as far to the right as he can.
As he deems safe, yes.
Right. And bicyclists are pretty aggressive people. And it's just, you know, there's a conflict, and I think it has to be addressed. It has to be acknowledged. The other thing is there are pedestrian issues aside from the bicycle issues. You use the sidewalk and you cross the entrances to Acme. There's no signage there telling the pedestrian there's a crosswalk here. I'm sorry, there's an exit here. You've got cars coming in and out of Acme. There's no acknowledgement of pedestrians. Are there any signs, for example, telling the bicyclists that they have pedestrians immediately on their right?
No, I don't believe so.
They're really,
I'm not sure that exists.
Perhaps it should.
Okay.
Perhaps it could. But in
we're
any
just
case,
going by the federal standard.
There's another possibility that I'd like to suggest, Mayor, and that is instead of thinking this as retreating from our long-time commitment to bicycling and pedestrian, that we choose to emphasize bicycling on the south and pedestrian on the north. As you say, people need to get to work, and if you're bicycling going up to Ridge is not a long trek, it seems to me that you are preserving the best for each. Well, and I strongly suggest that we seriously think about taking bicycles or not putting bicycles on River. I just think they're inconsistent with the rest of the activity along that road. It's unfortunate, and if bicyclists could be given the road from 5 to 8:30, that's great, or 8. That's great, but that's obviously impossible. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Anyone else for public comments on agenda items? Seeing none.
No hands, Mayor.
No hands?
No hands.
May I have a motion to close?
So they don't know how many crossings.
Any one of the council people like to give me a motion to close public comments on agenda items?
I'll move.
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have the approval of minutes of June 8th. We have 2 sets of minutes. We have version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is the original set of minutes, which includes a memo from Councilperson Keefe. Version 2 is basically the same set of minutes minus the memo. We removed the memo in so much that we deemed it that it wouldn't be appropriate for the minutes considering that was a memo written, a fairly short order prior to the meeting to discuss the budget. It had a quick and a response by our borough administrator, Teresa Casagrande, and what it didn't do is it didn't show the body of work that had gone in, the numerous documents, emails, and other communications that occurred. So it was one person's, say, view of the budget at the last minute. And it was also brought to my attention that attaching memos such as this to minutes would be inappropriate. The minutes would, if everybody was to be able to attach a memo to the minutes going forward, it would really defeat the purpose, because our minutes are really just to give an indication of what occurred during the meeting. And that's where we are. So I believe Councilperson Keefe would like to discuss this further.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would simply like to just state that the two versions of the minutes, the version 1, which includes the memo and some additional commentary that I made, is removed from version 2 entirely. I don't, if the governing body does decide that it's not appropriate for whatever reason to include the memo that was requested by the mayor, then I would simply ask that a summary and recitation of what I stated would be included, because it's not. In version 2, it's simply every council member's response to my memo and what I was speaking about and my concerns regarding the 2020 budget. It does not include what I had initially stated or summarize the memo that the whole entire conversation was based upon. And if you recall, during that meeting, the memo itself was in fact, publicly streamed with Teresa's comments infiltrated with it, which is included in version 1. So for completeness, for the purposes of transparency, to ensure that anybody who goes to look at these meeting minutes understands what we were talking about and what we were referencing, I would advocate, as I did on that night on June 8th, that the memo be included. Again, when I requested to discuss the budget at that meeting, because it was not initially included on the agenda, I was requested to prepare a memo, which I did. And so I would ask that it continue to be included in that version 1 for the purposes, again, of transparency and completeness is the appropriate version that we should be voting upon, and that if the inclination of the governing bodies to not include that again, we go back and maybe create a version 3 that does include at least some reference to what I stated, the information I shared with the governing body and the like.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I ask a question?
Excuse me, who spoke? Councilman Rodriguez, yes?
Yes. So this is really a question for Meg to see if there's a common ground here. You're suggesting that to put additional summary of what you had stated in, because we can refer to the memo like we refer to schematics, the way we refer to maps, the way we refer to other legal documents. We can refer in the statement rather than creating a precedent where we're going to start adding. I didn't understand the whole topic, actually, so it was good to hear what you had to say about it and why. Would it be sufficient, or would it be would you be satisfied if we added more language and then also referred to it explicitly? Because I don't believe it was part of the council package that night. I mean, it wasn't. I don't believe it was included.
I don't think it was included in the council package, no, but it was circulated to the full governing body prior to the meeting as an addition.
Right, and I guess, oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was an addition or if it was simply pulled up on the Zoom.
It was pulled up on the Zoom. It's, in the recorded history. I think it's certainly a public document that anybody can find, but I think we're heading down a slippery slope if we start adding memos. And if there's some comments you believe that weren't there, we'll look to table this and ask our borough clerk to yet again go back to the tape and and see what it is she missed. But you know, that's where I think this really should come down. You know, we put it up there, and the reason I requested your memo is so we could have some sort of document to understand what your concerns were with the budget. And so you had that, and of course there's disagreement with your conclusion. So, you know, if it is the council's favor, I'll ask that this be yet tabled again for the next meeting. We can go back and take another look at it. Is that the preference of the council?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Historically, have we included memos?
No.
Okay. What about including it as an appendix? Or as Councilman Rodriguez suggested, referring to it, and since it's already a public document.
Yes, it is referenced in version 2.
Would that be sufficient to reference it and include it as a public document?
Oh, it is a public, I'm going to just chime in here for what it's worth, and these are not, the council ultimately decides to approve the minutes. But one of the things I think you have to take a look at, particularly on something as detailed as the budget process. The budget process took place over the course of 5 months' time. And there are any number of memos and documents that the CFO or myself presented to the full governing body as part of the record. And if you want to look historically at these minutes, and you're going to look at one memo, which is an exchange basically that Councilwoman Krista Keefe shared with her fellow governing body members, and I did, I gave, some counterpoints or some things to consider as part of that presentation. But if you're going to include a memo like that as part of the budget process, when you look at this historically 5 years later, if someone doesn't see the other memos and documents that went along with this budget presentation, and there's any number of them, it doesn't really tell the complete story of what took place in that process. And as far as, I understand, Councilman Krista Keefe wanting to have the memo referenced. I read the minutes earlier. I think Allison, did reference the fact that the governing body shared a memo that Councilwoman Krista Keefe, had given. But I just think it's something that you'll have to consider going forward if you're going to make memos in full part of the minutes. That's an approach we've never taken, and it would make for some very lengthy minutes if you wanted to give a full version of what actually took place in what was a 5-month budget process, and at least several public meetings where documents were shared with the full governing body.
I think the big difference here is that we had used it to guide a conversation, and we addressed it point by point on both sides of the memo, in favor of, and then the counterpoints that were drawn up. And I do think because it wasn't part of the package, it just needs to be memorialized properly as part of the record, as opposed to meetings or other memos that may have been made that weren't referenced or never discussed. There's no point in referencing those as well because they weren't brought up or discussed. So it's important that the people who are going to look at these minutes in 10 years or 20 years, that they have access, fairly easy access rather than Oprah access, because it was something that was discussed at length. That, I think, is a more appropriate, practical approach to this.
Can I just chime in? Because in the past we have had resident letters, memos included in the minutes per request. So we either need to set a policy, or if someone had an issue with it, should have raised their objection to it and said, no, really, can we just reference it? Nobody said that's why the full memo was in there. And if it's not reflecting true answer or everything that was discussed up until the point of budget adoption, then why would we attach it to the minutes? Back in the minutes, if it's being said that it's not a true reflection or wasn't a full answer to Councilwoman Keefe's.
Councilwoman Keefe, could you just tell us where you think there's a lack of transparency?
Well, I don't think that it's a lack of transparency. I think it's just incomplete, because if you look at the new version, version 2, there's a brief paragraph that says I requested the budget listed on the agenda, and that Mayor Lucarelli requested I provide a memo for that discussion, and that I did so. It recites the budget meeting history, and then it has about 2 sentences about the substance of my memo, and then moves forward with everybody's response to my memo and what I had discussed in my presentation at length, but no further is there any mention of the substance of my memo or my presentation. So I just thought that it was the version 2 for that reason left a piece of the puzzle out. And, you know, while again at that meeting, I had requested that the entire memo be included, and I stand by that position. If that's not the will of the governing body, I would simply ask that a more detailed version of what my memo, you know, some of the points maybe that I mentioned, and that it specifically mention, you know, refer to the memo by title and date and such, so that it is a little bit more of a complete record. And again, for transparency, sometimes isn't what you present, it's what's not included in the presentation. And I think just for completeness purposes, like Borough Clerk Cinco Grana mentioned, that sometimes, you know, there's a request to include certain documents, and again, that request was made here. So again, I think it's just for the purposes of completeness for someone like Councilman Rodriguez mentioned, reading these minutes in 5 or 10 years, so they know exactly what it is that we are speaking about and referring to.
Okay, so what does the council favor? Version 1, version 2, or do we go back for version 3?
The meeting minutes are supposed to be a synopsis, so we can't include, and all the detail that was necessary was addressed. And the net result was that there was a desire by Councilwoman Keefe to cut the taxes. Councilman Rodriguez had proposed a compromise solution of $100,000 cut, 50 in surplus, 50 in capital improvement. And I suppose mercifully and through happenstance, it worked out that the way it had to be broken out, according to the CFO, is only 10,000 from surplus and 90,000 from capital improvements. And that's all the detail that was really required here. I'm in favor of version 2.
Well, Jim, that would actually be version 3, because that would cut out 1.5 pages or up to 2 pages of comments by Mayor Lucarelli, Administrator Casagrande, Councilman Rodriguez, Councilman McHugh, Councilwoman Koch, Councilwoman Sorensen, and yourself. None of which reflect a commentary that I had made. So it sounds like you'd be in version of a significantly shortened, in favor of a version number 3 that would be significantly shortened above all.
Does anyone else think that's what I said?
No.
No.
I think he was advocating for version 2.
And I'm in favor of version 2.
So, you know, just, this is Sal. I don't know if I'm on mute. Somebody can make a motion for any of these version 1, 2, or potentially 3, and let the votes fall, and wherever it leads, if we have to do a version 3 next meeting, we will. But why don't somebody start with a motion?
Let's start
I'll
with
make a motion. I make a motion that we approve version 2.
I second that motion.
Okay. Allison, roll call, please.
Councilmembers Vanahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Keefe,
No.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Can I may be out of turn, I'm sorry. Can we just do what Councilwoman Koch suggested and put the memo in as an appendix? And keep version 2?
The memo is part of the record now. So, but it's not attached to the minutes, but somebody could certainly find it because it's now part of the public record. So the vote here is either yes, no, or abstain to approve version 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Approval of minutes, June 9th, 2020 executive session, June 23rd, 2020 regular meeting, June 23rd, 2020 executive session. Motion to offer.
So moved.
Second.
You have a second? Good. Thank you. Allison, roll call, please.
Councilmembers Vanahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Sorensen's not here.
Here. Okay, old business adoption of ordinance number 2020-02, authorized purchase of 623 River Road. The motion to not move forward and adopt the ordinance. So,
And Mr. Mayor, just real quick, procedurally, this was on for public hearing, but since it's been decided that the ordinance will not proceed, we do not need the public hearing. We would simply need someone to make a motion, second, and a vote that the ordinance should be withdrawn, and then it will be over.
okay, so do I have a motion to withdraw ordinance 2020-02?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion to withdraw the ordinance.
Okay, so that's Betsy, the second.
Second.
Okay, Councilwoman Christner Keep as seconded. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmembers Banahan,
Yes.
Christner Keefe,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, very good. New business, council
Mayor,
committee.
excuse me, before we move on to new business, can I let Rich Gardella go? I don't believe we need him any longer.
Yes, Rich,
He's staying.
have a good
for-
evening. Safe home. Thanks
No,
for
he
staying in
doesn't
the
need his
office
deck.
late tonight.
We're good.
We're all set? Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
new
Have a good
business.
night.
I didn't hear that.
He just said thank you.
Okay, very good. New business, council committee reports, finance, Councilman Banahan. Any report?
Really not much here. I just covered the piece about the amendment to the budget and how it was necessarily restructured by the CFO. Other than that, we have a proposed amendment tonight to include a line item with respect to the clean communities. And we just killed 623, which is, tangential to the budget, but I suppose central in some way as well. But that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Personnel, Councilwoman Christner Keefe.
No updates.
Thank you. Planning and zoning, Councilwoman Koch.
Planning and zoning, the next planning board meeting is next Tuesday. It's a very light agenda. There's really nothing on it except to approve a resolution and the minutes. Last week was a zoning board meeting, last Thursday. It approved 2 applications for variances. And so it's pretty quiet. I'd just like to report on Fair Share Housing that our professionals are working out the final details. So we should have some feedback from them pretty soon. And I'd also like to offer, since Councilwoman Sorensen cannot be here, she just asked me to let the residents know that rec camp will start on Monday. There'll be some other third-party camps that started today, like soccer. And there was a scavenger hunt by the Boy Scouts on Saturday. And I'm sure maybe Councilman Rodriguez would like to address that. But it was great meeting. I was working down at the DeNormandy Park, the Robards Park, and a lot of parents coming down that had never been to that park before and really enjoyed it. So it was a great opportunity to showcase our latest park. And I think, Teresa, you had something to say about rec, about camp?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that on tonight's agenda, you'll see the appointments for the camp counselors. And that resolution also includes a $400 stipend to 2 of the counselors, one at the community center location and one at the McCarter Park location, to be what is termed to be the medical director of the camp. That requirement is part of what came down from the state of New Jersey for what towns needed to do if they wanted to hold camp. And that person would be responsible to take temperatures and keep records every day for all the campers. It is outside the scope of what a camp counselor normally does. We did try to get a school nurse or somebody with a medical background, or we even opened it up to our own first aid members, but we had no takers. That cost for that additional cost to our camp will be charged to the borough's storm trust, where we're charging all our COVID expenditures, and we will submit for reimbursement. The bar for reimbursement from the federal government when it comes to COVID-related expenses that are eligible are anything that would be COVID-related that's not normally in your budget. And we've run camp every year and have never had a stipend for a medical director to do these tasks at camp. So I'm comfortable that it will qualify for reimbursement when it's finally submitted. And I also want to compliment DJ on a lot of work that went into getting this camp ready, an inordinate amount of work. I'm hoping, and we're confident it's going to go forward. I did take note today that 2 local towns by me have started camp and had to cancel them because they had a couple of people test positive. So we're hoping that Fairhaven will remain an area where we don't have increasing cases, and that we'll be able to do all 4 weeks of the camp under very tight guidelines and set down from the state.
Yes, thank you. And I was going to congratulate DJ for all the effort he put into. We are one of the few municipalities that did go through the process of making sure that we could open the camp in accordance with the CDC guidelines. It was a long process, and let's just hope that all our children are safe and that COVID does not come onto our fields and everybody enjoys their summer. Very good. That leaves us with Police Fire OEM. Councilman McHugh?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, keeping with the COVID reimbursement talks, we've been obviously the chief, thank you, Chief, being very proactive, securing PPE and cleaning supplies, and keeping very detailed records. And I believe we have recovered all those funds. Chief, would you care to just explain a little bit? I think the town would be happy to hear that we're being very proactive. We're among the first to submit this, and we've received funds back already.
Yeah, back in June, we submitted all the funds that we paid out so far for COVID. It had to be in by June 15th, and we received a check from FEMA through the county for the full amount. It was $36,000 and change. So every COVID expense we had so far up to June 15th had been reimbursed to the borough.
Excellent.
Great news. Thank you, Chief, for doing that. And
thank you, Councilman.
I guess the bad news, some of you may have heard, Fairhaven's numbers are up. We are currently at 5 active cases. Keeping with the trend in the state, the governor just shared today that young people in New Jersey are the fastest growing group of individuals who are testing positive for COVID-19. The better half of the cases in Fairhaven are younger individuals. This could be for a few reasons. It may not be the dire partying reasons that you may see in the news. The chief actually had a pretty, I think, spot-on assessment that a lot of these college-age students have to get tested so they can go to college, and that's what's happening. So, with more tests, we're getting more cases. So, with a population that traditionally hasn't been being tested, they are now being tested more. So, with more tests, we're going to see more cases. So, I think overall, we are still Fairhaven, we're doing a great job staying vigilant, and keep that up. Obviously, it's still a pressing issue, and we've been dealing with this for a long time. But stay the course, and keep wearing your PPE and masks, washing hands. So that's for any of the residents who are alarmed by our surge in numbers, we're still well below the county averages or even state averages. But with that, we're not immune to it. Also, just really quickly from the environmental committee, Borough Administrator worked really hard to update the environmental aspect, especially regards to the Environmental Commission and recycling. I'll try to share this real quick, so if anyone wants to take a look at it. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you can go to departments, recycling. I'm not going to go through all this right now, but this is all brand new. Just a very quick synopsis of what we can recycle, what's appropriate paper, what type of plastics, items that won't be collected. Feel free to go through and check out all these tabs to the left. Really nice visual cues. Also, as a nice reminder, and the environmental committee, we're looking into designing a sticker that may be placed on recycling cans, so to constantly remind our residents what can and cannot go, because we're a recycling town and we love recycling, I think, generally, and perhaps we think we can recycle more things than we can't. And when in doubt, maybe people will err on the side of recycling, but perhaps they should just, take a few moments to look at this and see what can and cannot, just so that our recycling processing center can be more efficient and effective. And it actually helps keep our costs down, right? Because we pay less for garbage than recycling. So you also help us financially, help the environment and our wallets. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
I did want to mention, Mayor, that I want to compliment Betty Ann Borough, who did a lion's share of the actual design work with that. The concept might have come from my exchanges with the Environmental Commission, but Betty Ann worked very hard on it. And also, it's still a work in progress. Once we finalize it, it's been shared with the Environmental Committee. I'm sure it'll come up tomorrow night at their meeting, and then we'll go ahead and launch it through our various social media platforms and get it out there to the public at large. I think we'll get some very fine results from it.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Thank
Mr. Mayor, can I just say something real quick?
Yes, Chief.
Two things. First, you also like to thank Teresa and Debbie Otts down there on the borough as far as getting this money back. There was a lot, I'm looking at the file right now, probably 100 different purchases, and she went and had made copy of every purchase order and every thing that she gave to me, and we filed for it. So I'd like to thank her. And also, Councilman McEwen, you mentioned about the numbers spiked a little bit. Just to let you know, it wasn't like we say kids, I call it kids, but it's actually more college age. So I just wanted to clarify, it's like college age, not so much kids, college age kids.
Yeah,
we say kids now, but college age. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Chief. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Parks and Recreation, Communications, Engineering, DPW, and Borough Facilities, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. I'm going to just brief on 3 items: the brush committee, the DPW facility, and the police department facility. So just to start with the brush site, we've had multiple meetings now. We are contending with a lot of reopening of activities, and so I believe our meetings are going to start moving around in terms of the day of the week from a logistical perspective. But I want to thank all the people that have currently been participating in the working of the committee. In the last meeting, we evaluated 9 scenarios, ranging from do absolutely nothing to shut the whole thing down, and everything in between, including new designs. We looked at reducing the intensity in the community and so forth. So we are evaluating those scenarios. There's a lot of work to do on the financial front, and analyzing multiple factors. So we don't have anything to recommend to the council yet. I was hoping to yield at least 1 or 2 near-term results, but the more we unravel the yarn, the more questions that pop up, which leads me to an idea that we had similar to that of the restaurant committee, which is to potentially put out a short survey specific about the collection of brush, the use of the facility, different options of what to do with it when it does get collected, the frequency of the collection, who collects it, where does it go, what do we do with it. So there's a number of things that we're looking into, and of course, this problem wouldn't be a problem if it was easy to solve. We would have dealt with it years ago. So we are trying to take our time and carefully work through it. So on the police department, about a week and a half ago, Councilman McHugh and I met with the chief and walked the current police department property. We are also going to, for the purpose of discussing different layouts and the current problems and the current usage of the facility. We also, I believe we've established a meeting this Friday at the end of the week to further discuss the issue with our planner, architect, sorry, hold on. Sorry for that. A whole bunch of people just came into my house. Children who were outside. So that meeting will be Friday, and we hope to have pulled forward some of the ideas and start looking at the property and start etching out some ideas for the council to consider. And then lastly, DPW, we did a walkthrough, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, Friday, with Rich. We walked the property. The purpose of walking the property was to consider a third layout. Originally, there was a layout that had the facility on 3rd Street. There's also the current location of the facility, the building, and we were considering angling the building perpendicular to the current building and putting it where the recycling containers and garbage containers are on the current piece of property. So we did not spend any money on this yet. I believe there was $20,000 capped on a new design. It doesn't look like, well, we currently haven't spent any money. Rich, who has expertise in the area, will create a layout, and if it's something that the council likes, then we will get official drawings created. So we haven't gotten that far yet, but there is progress on that concept as well. Ultimately, we're looking to tighten up the DPW to a certain degree, to keep it on the same piece of property, but maybe tighten it up a bit so that we're not using as much, we don't have as much dead space of land, but it remains to be seen because we don't have a functioning layout yet. So with that, Brush, PD, and DPW, progress in all of those areas, lots of work getting done. Just wanted to report out. No decisions have been made. Nothing is yet there to be proposed. People can come to me or go to the mayor or go to Mike McHugh and put suggestions or requests to us so that we're not rushing this. There's no rush here, though we are urgently working to get the right design created for the town going forward. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councilman Rodriguez. Okay, introduction of ordinance number 2020-03, the general capital ordinance. May I have a motion to offer?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you very much. Allison, a roll call, please.
Council members Banahan,
Yes.
Christopher Keith,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda, resolutions 2020-120.
Mr. Mayor, the public hearing is going to be the 27th, Allison?
Correct.
Yes.
27. Thank you, Sal, thank you. Always forget to add that. Resolutions 2020-120 through 2020-129. Any abstentions? Anybody need to be pulled out? Seeing none, may I have a motion to offer?
So moved.
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Council members Banahan,
Yes.
Christopher Keith,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, department reports. We have the February, March, April, and May Chief Financial Officers reports. the June 2020 Municipal Clerk, Dog License, Planning and Zoning Board, and Police Department. Motion to accept reports is submitted.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Go to the borough. Please use the raise your hand button, or I believe *9, and state your name and address for the record. Please observe a time limit of 3 minutes. May I have a motion to open?
So moved.
So moved. Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Christner Keefe.
Second.
We have a second. All right. Of our attendees that are here, does anybody have any good of the borough?
I have Jill Butler Everts. I'm going to allow to talk. She just unmutes herself. There she is.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Hi,
can,
good
Jill.
evening.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for your time. My husband and I have been emailing questions to the borough starting back on June 18th, specifically to Rich Gardella and others in the building and zoning departments. The questions are related to proposed grading on the adjacent property at 19 Catherine Street, which is currently under construction. We have concerns with water issues, and we've emailed pictures reflecting those water issues. We haven't received any response with respect to answers or explanations to our questions. Since we've been unable to resolve the matter over email, I thought maybe I could address it in person or virtually this evening. I want to understand, when can we expect getting a response with explanations, or when can we expect someone to come to our home, which was noted in an email from Teresa back on July 6th. Our questions are really, we're requesting that someone come and walk us through the proposed grading of the property, and we want someone to assure us that the standing water issues that we're currently experiencing will be eliminated, and we really want assurances of that.
No. Teresa, would you like to handle that, or?
You know, I have had an exchange back and forth. I spoke to the borough engineer, and ultimately, you know, he did send a member of his staff out to the property. As a matter of course, the borough engineer doesn't generally meet with residents and take them through all the plans. It would be extremely time consuming. He is ultimately aware of the considerations and the drainage plan as submitted from the professionals from the developer that's building the property. Will have to address those concerns, and the borough engineer will have to be satisfied that that they are doing everything they can to that the drainage plan is satisfactory, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, you know, we sent pictures of the water issues that we're currently experiencing, and you, in your, Teresa, I'm sorry, but in your email, you specifically said that somebody had come out to our home to talk to us, and nobody has been here.
I know Rich Gardella told me that he sent somebody to the property, and I don't, you know, I just assumed that he had said that they spoke to you, but if you weren't home at the time, I apologize.
We have been home. We have absolutely been home during this. And I guess my last question is, what's our recourse if the issues are not resolved to our satisfaction?
That's more of a legal question. I'll let the borough attorney jump in on that.
Unfortunately, I can't give you legal advice. The plans that were approved, I don't know if this was part of a subdivision or a plot plan for an individual home, so I'm not sure the details.
It's a plot plan for an individual home that is under construction, and I live down the street, and I've gone by and I've looked at it. There does appear to be the grading as it sits right now, with no drainage systems, does sheet water towards the Evarts home. Now, whether that gets to their foundation or not, I do not know. The site is still under construction. I don't believe it's in its final state. And I think that's, you know, as a matter of course, the development permits issued to the developer / property owner, and that prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy, the grading plan must, an as-built survey must be submitted to ensure that the approved grading plan is complied with. Now, ideally, the engineers did their jobs properly. The approved grading plan will not cause any water to be sheeted from the neighboring property onto yours, Jill. And that's why we have grading plans, why we have as-built surveys, and all that's reviewed. I couldn't tell you, I don't think Sal can tell you what the recourse is. But I think what we have to do is wait until the finished product is completed. If we still have drainage issues at that point, I don't know if we can go back to the developer's agreement or what it is we can force the developer to comply with at that point. But I think this is something we're going to have to work through as the development nears its completion, to ensure that you do not have a continuing water issue at your home that was created by the development of your neighboring property. But unfortunately, none of us here are let's say, able to give you a legal opinion as to what your course of action would be in the event that you do suffer from a water issue. So,
and Mr. Mayor, one other point, I don't know if Freehold Soil Conservation District approval was triggered by this, but if it was, they're the ones who typically handle the runoff issues during construction. So for the resident, one of the things that should be looked at is whether a Freehold Soil Conservation permit was issued, and if so, is it being complied with?
Okay, so you can, so Jill, I think you can find the Freehold Soil Conservation District online and perhaps give them a call, and maybe they can address your concerns.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any of the good of the borough? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, whoever's on attendees still left, we will be going to executive session. Action will not be taken. We thank you for coming tonight and for your comments and input. It always helps the democratic process. Thank you very much, council people. We ask that you all now place your Zooms on mute and stop your video feeds, and we will be speaking to you on a conference call momentarily.
Good night. Thank you.
Zoom.
All right. I got Councilwoman Sal. Susan O'Brien still here. Wonderful. Councilman Q. Koch. Banahan. We have a quorum. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion.
Councilman Chris Rodriguez made the motion to adjourn. Thank you very much, folks. Everybody have a wonderful evening.
Good night, all.
Night.
Good night.
All good?
All good.